Hello, hello. Hey, I got something to say. Now, Tammy and I worked it out ahead of time, so you're in for a real treat. We actually recorded this. Don't worry. We're going to keep everything in like it's live, right, Tammy?
Absolutely.
How are you? I love your
I'm
background.
Oh, thank you. I am doing great. How are you doing?
I'm good. Tammy, before I even read your intro, I forget where you live.
I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina.
You are? Are you near Apex, North Carolina?
It's not too far. A
Really,
couple
I,
hours.
I I might be going there on business, and I'm like, I've never
Oh,
heard of Apex, North Carolina.
yeah. That's closer to Raleigh, but not too far.
No. All right. Well, I love your intro. I just love this. I can't wait for them to hear. All right. Tami Jaffe's in the house. Here we go. From farm girl, which I got to find out about, to corporate VP to CEO of her own business, Tami knows what it takes to step up and make significant changes in your life and career. Tami is a wife, mom of two beautiful girls, and a savvy entrepreneur who helps others make the transition from employees to entrepreneurs so that they can not only replace their income, but exceed. Come on, Tami. That's why we have to have you on. Hey, I got something to say. Okay, so we need to dive into it because we're going to combine let's keep it real and hey, I got something to say. So one word to best describe your past 30 days, whatever pops into your head, what would that word be and why?
Oh, well, my word is inspired, and that's my word I use throughout, but especially in the last year, I just got back from a trip from the UK. And it was so inspiring. Just my husband and I went, well, he had a business retreat and we played tourist around London and different places. And it's just to me to be able to travel, to be able to get out, it's always inspiring. And I also had my retreat in the last 30 days, and that was amazing. So I think inspired wraps it up.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun stuff going on. And
Yes.
I've only been to London once, and I went with my son because I had a speaking gig over there. My husband couldn't go, and we had a ball. We loved it.
It is so beautiful. I mean, to see, like, I was just telling one of my clients, I'm like, we saw a church that was built almost 1,000 years ago. Like, it just things we don't get to see here that are just amazing and immaculate. And to think about how these people did all of this without the tools, without the technology that we have today.
Yeah. And not that I'm big into it, but I did really like seeing the palace and all the people and all the cars. It was so fun. It was such a great. All right. So tell me about the retreat. What kind of retreat did you have?
Yeah, my retreat, I do 2 retreats a year for those in my Inspired Business School. And so this one was our marketing and sales retreat. And so we are focusing how to market your business, how to improve your sales and get yourself out there so you can grow your business faster.
And is it virtual or in person or both?
This one was virtual. We are hoping the next one in October will be in person, but we've kind of been going back and forth with some of them. As everyone has, I guess, these days.
Yeah. All right. So I played hooky yesterday, Tammy. I took off and I went to Lancaster, PA, where I get all my flowers and vegetables. I'm a big gardener. And I spent time with the animals. I love feeding the animals. And a lot of the places where you go for the veggies, they have little grains there. And as soon as I cross over into farmland, all of a sudden I feel my whole body go. I didn't even know I was tense, but then all of a sudden I feel like everything relaxes. So tell me about farm life. I need to know everything and where and how and what you did. And did you milk cows?
Oh, I mean, I have milked cows. My cousins had milk cows. We had beef cattle. So I didn't have to do that every day. Thank goodness, because that is a lot of work. Not that anything in farming is a lot of work. It's very hands-on. But I grew up in Michigan and my dad was a farmer. His dad was a farmer. So passed on generations. And we always had potatoes and corn and we had sunflowers and beans and all kinds of stuff throughout the years, but we had horses and we had cattle, and it was a different experience. I learned the meaning of hard work very young.
Yeah.
I mean, I was expected probably from the time I was 8, I think is when I had to start mowing the lawn, and we had like an acre. So it wasn't like a little lawn. And had to start like driving a tractor. I had my license. Gave us farmers permits back then when you were like 14. So I was able to drive by the time I was 14. And it was just learning the meaning of like manual hard labor. We would come home from school and we would have to go out on the farm and help with different things. And I realized very early on that I didn't want to do that the rest of my life. I love my dad, loved what he did. But I was like, I think I would rather do something that's not quite as manual labor. I'm still a big hard worker. I can't help but be a hard worker because that's ingrained in me. But I was like, okay, maybe I should be an accountant because I was always good at math. So I went into accounting instead.
That's different.
Yes.
You know how people say you're really not that separate. You're so like in so many different ways, and somebody knows somebody. Well, my mother-in-law, her family is all in Michigan, and she grew up in Michigan. Maybe they were friends, I don't know, on a dairy farm. And her dad and the mom, and I think there were 8 of them. They really knew what it was like, to get out there early in the morning, like you said, and then when you're after school. And then she tells stories of how she was dressed up in her little outfit going into the grocery stores to sell cottage cheese.
Yep. I used to sell corn on the corner of our roads. We would go out and sell stuff. And it's just so interesting how it's similar but different, right? Like I remember there were years where we would have droughts and we would lose a ton of crops, and then other years where there'd be floods. And just watching my parents as they had to figure it out. When you lose half your crops or all your crops, like how do you survive the next year? And as they, I saw my mom try lots of different, she's kind of had more of an entrepreneur spirit. So she did lots of different businesses and things throughout the years to help substantiate that. And so it was always interesting to see how, they take these situations and what's happening and how to overcome it. And I think that's so much of what we do in the entrepreneurial life. Is like, you have these things come through and it doesn't go the way you want it to. And you've got to figure it out. You've got to take the next step. You can't just like throw your hands up and be like, okay, I'm done. I'm giving up on that. And so it taught me a lot about being persistent and the resilience.
That's so true. Somebody said to me the other day, not that they were complaining, but they had a very amazing sheltered life. And they didn't, this guy was like 32, and he didn't really have to work hard. I mean, not that he didn't appreciate what he had, he really did, but his parents provided everything. And then he went out into the real world and he didn't feel like he was set up, for the trials and errors and the ups and downs. And I was thinking about that because I came from very humble beginnings, and I always thought, maybe I didn't have a lot, but man, those life skills did set me up for being an entrepreneur, because you talk about persevering. Everyone thinks, you're your own boss, but that's one part of it, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you see beyond when everything looks like there's no way out? So my question to you is, I'm just backing up. You said you went to school to be an accountant, but where did the leap go that then you were the vice president and CEO of your own business?
Yeah. So I started off as a CPA. I call myself a recovering CPA now. As I'm trying to recover from that. But I moved up in finance and technology throughout my corporate career, spent 20 some years in corporate. And as I moved up, I loved what I did. I worked for a real estate investment management company. I loved the people I worked with. I loved my team. I had an amazing team, but I didn't love the politics. And the further up I got in the organization, I just realized like, they want me to be someone who I didn't want to be. And I wasn't willing to bend my integrity to fit into the role. And so I started to realize I needed to do something different. I had this desire to help more people. And so I had always called myself a mentor manager, and I got to a point that I was trying to figure out what that next step for me was. I always thought I was just going to, corporate life was going to be my life for the rest of the time. So it was, a big transition to be like, okay, what am I going to do now? And as I started hearing more about coaching, I started working with a coach to help me figure it out. And I started working with an energy healer because I had some physical issues with all of the frustration I was feeling about my job. And it was a combination of those two things that made me realize I wanted to coach people. I wanted to help more people. And I wanted to do energy work to help them move through things faster because I saw the amazing results that I got.
Now you perked my little ears up. Okay.
Yeah.
So it took a lot of courage, though, and a lot of guts to move on after 20 some years. You said 27?
Well, a little over 20 years in corporate. Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's scary. That's scary because that is what you know. And even though
Right.
there's, trial and error, you're like, well, this is really risky. So was there a moment you're like, okay, this is it. I'm not doing it. Was it because of the integrity thing? Like they wanted you to do things you didn't feel comfortable with? Was that the final straw?
Yeah, there were a few things that happened along the way. I would say the one, if you want to hear the one story
I did.
that really
Yeah.
she's like, I do. The one story that pushed me over the edge. So I was in a middle management role, a senior director at the point, and we were going through yet a reorganization because we did that about every 6 months at our organization. And my managers came to me. I actually had two managers at the time. I had a direct report manager, and then I had a responsibility manager, which was a little odd, but they came to me and they're like, we want you to take on an expanded role. And I was like, great. I was excited about that. I was going to take on another team. And as we were going through this reorg, I got pregnant with my second child, and I had been through many miscarriages. So I did not share that information until I had gotten through my first trimester. And the time came, we were still working on the reorganization. Nothing had been announced yet. And I was like, okay, it's time that I need to tell them that I am pregnant. So I went in and I shared with them that I was pregnant. Of course, they were happy for me and congratulated me. And then everything went silent when it came to the reorganization. And I'd ask, what's happening? And they're just like, well, it's going up through the ranks to get approval. And there was just like no communication where I had been extremely involved before. And I got a call from my direct manager, who I didn't meet with very often. He didn't really know much about what I did. And he called me and he's like, can you come out to my office? It's like, okay, something's up, because he never called me to his office. So I go up there, and there sitting is my other manager as well. And I had never met with the two of them together.
Oh, God.
And so then I knew, like, okay, something's going on. And they proceeded to tell me that not only am I not getting the role that we had talked about, that they were also taking away all my current direct reports, and I was going to be moving under a different manager. And then they proceeded to tell me some things that were going to be happening with people on my team that I knew wasn't the right fit for them. And I just finally just said to them, I need to leave before I say something I'm going to regret. And I walked out, I went back to my office, I shut the door, and I cried for the first time ever at work. And I finally was like, okay, I gotta find out why. Like, why is this happening? So I pulled myself together. I went back in, and I'm like, why? I'm like, why is this the decision? And what they said next kind of hit me harder than what they had told me before. They said, Tami, this isn't what we think you deserve, but it was out of our control.
Gotcha.
And I sat there and I thought, okay, I don't have control of my career anymore. Neither do my managers. So who does?
Mm.
And that was the defining moment for me, that I was like, I worked my ass off, right, for this organization for years.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we would go on vacation, and my husband's always like, I'm going to throw your phone in the ocean or pool, because we always seem to be by water on our vacations. He's like, because I was constantly tied to my phone. I was constantly tied to my job. And I was like, what am I doing this for? I put so much time and effort into giving and helping an organization grow for their vision. But what was my vision? And it was at that time that I had to step back and say, what is my vision? What do I really want?
Yeah.
If this isn't it, then what is? And so that was that time that I started looking and started making that transition to say, what is this next step for me?
Okay, there's so much to unpack there, but first of all,
Yeah.
kudos to you for not breaking down and keeping strong in that meeting, because that was blindsiding you. I mean, here you are all excited about this new position. Is it possible, probable it's because you were pregnant?
Yes. And
Yeah.
some other things that I can't reveal, but
Yeah.
and there's a lot that to unpack with all of it, right? But the point for me now, I mean, at the time it was stressful, it was frustrating, I was irritated, right?
Devastated.
But
Yeah.
yeah, and probably didn't always react in the best way. But I wouldn't be where I am right now if that hadn't happened. I
Yeah. Oh,
probably would
yeah.
have stayed and just kept working my butt off for an organization that didn't really value me,
Mm,
instead of finding how I could serve others better, how I could help more people grow. And
yeah.
so, I mean, I started off as a leadership coach because I was so determined to improve leadership in corporate. And that's where I originally started, because I saw some great leaders, I saw some bad leaders.
Yeah.
And, after a few years, people started coming to me saying, how did you make this transition? How did you go from being a VP in a Fortune 100 company to starting your own business? And it was finally one of my coaches that came to me and was like, would you just go help these people? And so that's when I switched over to being a business coach and helping people go from employees to entrepreneurs, because there's so much to learn.
Yeah.
There's,
Absolutely.
yeah.
You know, I was asked, it's only for 2 courses, 90 minutes each, to speak on entrepreneurship to seniors in high school that
Mm,
probably won't graduate high school. They come from very underprivileged areas. And I'm
yeah.
thinking, what can I say to them, Tami? Like I'm asking, like that will meet them where they are, because for most of them, they're probably thinking, okay, I'm not going to get a job, so I'm going to work for myself. But as you know, you don't want to discourage anyone from being an entrepreneur, but most people don't realize the undertaking. So what I would love, I asked some of my people what they wanted to ask you, and we're going to get into some of your tips, but the advice that you would give, and I got it over and over again from women, I'm going to say most of them are in their late 40s, 50s,
Mhm.
and they're considering going out on their own. Of course, their husbands have other ideas, some of them, but they want to know, is there something that, like, okay, you're the right person for this? And I'm paraphrasing because it was over and over again. How
Yeah.
do you know I have what it takes? How do you know I have the right personality? Because, they hear all the good,
Mhm.
bad, and ugly stories. And I know that's a
Sure.
big question, but I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, no, there's a lot there, but let's start with one thing. If you have that gut feeling that you should be doing something, you got to listen to your gut. There's a reason it's there nagging at you, telling you and giving you those signs that you need to make a change. So whether it's because there's something negative happening at your job, like similar to what happened to me,
Yeah.
or there's just that like inkling that you're like, okay, I want to do something more. I want to start a business, or you have this idea in your head. There's a reason that idea is there. And so it isn't an easy decision to make that transition. And I talk about this in my book. My book is called You Already Made the Decision, You're Just Not Happy with It. And
I
when
love that.
thank you. And so it's a guide on how to make better decisions. But one of the things I talk about in there is the formula for making a lasting change. And so for those of you who are thinking about making this transition, about going from employees to entrepreneurs, or starting the side hustle, whatever it is, the first step may look different than the 10th step, right? And so you got to start with clarity. It all starts with clarity. And I describe this. Let me grab my book. I can actually show you here, but
Oh, cool.
it was on the podcast. I'll explain it for you. And this is what I call the clarity trifecta. And so you see the circle in the middle has the word clarity. And then around the edges of the triangle around it are confidence, courage, and commitment. And when you want to make any change in your life, so you can apply this to a lot of different areas, but we're going to specifically talk about making the transition to starting your business. It all starts with clarity. The reason that you haven't made the leap, or the reason that you haven't taken that next step, is because you're not clear on what it is. You're not clear on how to do it. You're not clear on who can help you. You're not clear on a lot of things, right? When you're in a job, somebody's there telling you what to do and how to do it. When you start a business, you don't always have that person there. And so you can end up doing a lot of the wrong things, which is why so many businesses go out of business, is because they run out of cash flow. And so when you know the right things to do, and you know who can help you, when you know what steps you need to take, that clarity bubble starts to grow. And you don't have to have all the answers. You just need to know some of the next steps. Right. And I always like to say you want the big vision of where you want to go, and you need the first few steps. And it's almost like when you're going up a mountain and there's that cloud around the mountain, but you can see the peak when you're far enough away. And that's kind of what it's like in entrepreneurship. You're like, I can see this big peak at the top of where I want to get to, but there's this cloud around all of the steps I need to be taking to get there. And once your clarity grows, once you start to get some of those answers to the questions that you have, then your confidence will grow, because your confidence is your faith and belief that you can do it.
Yeah.
Your faith and belief in yourself. But it's hard to believe in yourself when you don't even know what steps to take.
Yeah.
And as that clarity grows, the courage grows, and you get the courage to take the next step. And you take that next step, and then the next step becomes a little more clear. And then you take the next step and the next step, and your momentum starts to build. And your commitment grows as your clarity grows, because everybody says it starts with commitment. Well, the trick is it starts with enough commitment to go out and get the clarity you need, but it's hard to be committed to something that you don't understand and you're not clear on. And so when your clarity grows, your commitment also grows. And so that's the clarity trifecta. And as I've added like a circle around that as well for consistency, because that's where the momentum and the growth comes in. with that, now I'm all blurry because I share holding the phone up there. The consistency is how you get your momentum and you get that snowball effect.
Yeah.
Because we all want to start rolling. We want to get that snowball effect. I'm sorry, it's still really blurry. So let's see if we can make that better. And so
you're clear now.
Okay. And so you gotta figure out what you should be doing. You have to know what steps you need to be taking. And then you have to be consistent with those things that work and focus on the things that are working and not the things that are just the shiny objects out there that everyone else is saying, you got to try this, you got to do this, because a lot of those aren't right for someone new in business.
Tami, I love that. I love that, because I'm thinking my journey was a little different. I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, but I wasn't planning it. It just fell on my lap. But for me, but it's the same thing. After 10 years of working at a health club for someone, giving them my all, like everything, someone heard a rumor, which it wasn't even true, like that I was going to open up my own gym. Somebody said, "Oh, you're so great, you should open up your own gym." I'm like, yeah, you never know. But they fired me at the thought of it without even asking me if it was true. So what do you think I did? Well, then I opened up my own. There you are. I opened up my own gym, and thank God they fired me, right? But for me, it was the same thing with clarity. I was so passionate about what I wanted to do for others and how I wanted to serve them, that the clarity was right there. I mean, I didn't know how to go about it, but I went and gather, like you said, such a great network and mentor of people that circled around me to help. Like I wanted to be every single day as much as possible with people that were where I wanted to go.
Yeah.
And because I was a trainer, I got to do that. And so everyone always says to me, well, how did you know you wanted to do it? Well, because there was such a burning desire to give people what I thought they couldn't find out there already. And I thought I could, really serve them better. So I want to circle back. Forget just even the kids I'm going to be addressing, but what would you tell young people who are considering, do I want to go to college? Should I start my own business? What's some advice you would give to junior or senior high school students?
Oh, that's such a great question. I have younger kids. My kids are like in middle school age, but they're both little entrepreneurs as well. And so starting their own little businesses. And, I think the one thing I would say is really understand what your goal is. Like, what are some of the things that you want to create in your life? Because, it depends on what you want to do, whether you need the formal education or you need more of what I'm going to call the informal education, which is still education. You still need whichever path you go down, whether it's college or you need to be learning something all the time. If we're not learning, we're not growing. And so you can learn in a formal education setting if you want to do things that require that type of education. You can't become a lawyer or a doctor without going through that. But if you want to do something more on the entrepreneurial side, you want to start a business, you want to start a gym, you want to, help others through something, then you've got to find the right people to support you and teach you what you need to know to get there.
Yeah.
So I think regardless of what you do, you need to have the right support system for where you want to head. And I always like, we've got to at least try. So when you've got that gut feeling and it's like, okay, I want to try something, put it out there, just start, just take one step, because the worst that's going to happen is it doesn't go well and you've got to start over. That's not any worse than not doing it. Right? Because you learn things. And the next time you go to do something like that or start a different business, you will already be so much further ahead because you've already learned all these other things you should be doing. But if you get the right support and the right coach, they're going to help you through not taking all those wrong steps to begin with.
I agree. All right. I'm going to go a little over because I think what you're saying, people really, really need to hear. And it's all the questions I get asked all the time. But I want to circle back to something you mentioned, but I want a little more clarity on this. Stop chasing all the shiny objects and get a strategy.
Yeah. Yes. So I always say, as soon as you put the entrepreneur hat on, right, you're like, okay, I'm going to start a business. Every social media out there knows that you are now a business owner or an entrepreneur, and you start getting hit with all of the ads, all of the different things saying, you've got to try this one thing that's going to make you millions. I've got all the leads you need. And you don't know what works and what doesn't work. And those are all the shiny objects I'm talking about, because some of those things don't work in the startup phase. Some of them work better when you're making consistent income already, and then you have the money to invest back into it to help you continue to grow. And so knowing what to do when in your business is really critical. And there's so many things that, I tried. And I think my hard lesson around this was I was in a coaching certification program and they brought in another expert to help with funnels and Facebook ads and stuff. And it was an additional program we had to buy. And so I bought into it because I'm like, yes, that's what I need. I need to automate, and spent a good 6 months trying to build out the funnel and start running ads and really got nothing from it. And did it again and did a different funnel and tried it again. And I went to the person after I got done with this program afterwards and asked her about working with her individually, because I'm like, I really need to nail this. I need to get this down. And she's like, well, I don't work with people that are making less than 20,000 a month. And I was like, well, then why did you guys sell us the program? Because at that point I was still new in coaching and I was not there yet. And this is what happens all the time. Like people buy into programs that are not the right fit for where they're at.
Mm.
And it's not necessarily the fault of advertising. But they need to be more clear in their selling process that you should be at certain levels or you need to be at a certain point. But people just buy into them anyways, because they're like, oh, I want to be at 20,000. So I'm just going to buy the program. Well, it's not going to get you there because you don't have the funds to actually invest in all the things that need to happen. And you spend so much time behind the screen trying to build these things out instead of actually going out and meeting people and doing what you need to do to get your first clients.
Which leads me to the last tip I want to get in about being where your clients are. Show up where your ideal clients are. Tell us more about that.
Yes. I mean, the fastest way to really scale and get out there is to be where your clients are. So first of all, you got to know who your ideal clients are, right? So being really clear, and that clarity part we're talking about, being really clear on who they are, and then where do they show up? Are there conferences they're going to? Are they members of associations? Are they part of different networking groups? Where do they show up? And then show up there, whether you're showing up there just to mingle as a starting point. But then I think you need to grow into, sponsoring the event, having a booth there. Speaking at the event is your best way to be in front of those people, speaking at an event and building that trust. Because when you're on the stage, on someone else's stage where they've already brought in this audience, you didn't have to pay for it, right? Yeah. They already brought in this audience. They've nurtured them. They already built this trust with these people. And they're like, hey, we're going to bring Sandy on because she is amazing at what she does. And they build up your credibility. Those people already have a trust factor with you. And so when you can get on the right stages in front of the right people, it can make all the difference. And I see a lot of people who are like, I just want to get out there in all things. And they end up trying to do so much, but they're not in front of the right people. Yeah. And so when you can be really targeted and specific where you show up and how you show up, it can help grow your business quickly.
Tami, that is so true. So I, after 30 some years, sold all my health clubs. Yeah. In 2019. Perfect timing. I didn't know it, but the opportunity came up. And then I did, my side gig became my main gig. Well, I didn't ever have to network because my gyms had thousands of members. So that's where all speaking, everything came from. And then all of a sudden I had to network. Well, what I would do, I would go to a lot of these networking events that I was having fun at. And I really liked all the people. I mean, I love people, but they really weren't going to bring me clients. Mm-hmm. And you only have so many hours in a week. So I had to be very clear and strategic. If I'm going to that event, that's cool, but then that's just really for fun. And it's for my social. Yeah. But if I'm going to that event, it's because I want to get business. And for me, I always make it, if I come away with one great lead, that's amazing. At each event. But I had to become, which is not easy for me. I could be a wing now. I had to become very clear on who my client was and where to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you said, coming away with one lead. Like, that's the other thing I always tell my clients, like, you've got to have a purpose in networking, right? You can't just go in, and you said you've realized like this one is just for me, for social, and that's awesome. Yeah. But, I know there's times where you can spend a half a day just going to a networking event by the time you do, their lunch and the speaker and the drive and everything else. It can consume a lot of your time. So you do need to make sure that it's giving you something. And even if that is your social, that's cool, like accepting it for what it is. Yeah. But if you go into an event, have an objective, you're not like there trying to like turn the people there into your clients, because that's just, never fun for anyone. But like your objective should be like finding speaking engagements, asking for referrals, be clear on what you want to walk away with so that when you go in, you know what you're asking for, and you can also give when you're
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll tell you what, it's a new thing for me that people say to me, I'm good at helping people. Like, all right, because that's what I do. I love mentoring. But they're like, well, what's your ask? And I used to be, for the first couple of years, for a hug, I don't really know what my like. I didn't know what my ask is.
Right.
Now, I go in, I know what my ask is.
Yeah.
All right, Tammy, we're going to wrap up. I really appreciate you being on. I know this is going to inspire and help so many people out there. But before we go, tell us every which way we can find you and buy your book or go to your retreats or hire you as a coach.
Yes. So you can find me, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Tami Jaffe, pretty much everywhere. Instagram is Tami J Jaffe, and my website is Tami Jaffe. So all of that is pretty easy. You can find me at any of those ones. I also have a gift I'd like to share with your audience. If they want more on how to make a jumpstart in their business, you can go to thejumpstartkit.com, and that is going to give you my guide, which is this amazing toolkit that gives you how to get a jumpstart on your strategy, how to get a jumpstart on your clients, how to get a jumpstart on your numbers, how to get a jump. There's so much in there. And so what you should be focused on to help you grow your business right now with where you're at. So you can grab that at thejumpstartkit.com and connect with me. I'd love to hear about you and your business. LinkedIn is probably one of the best places to message me there.
Cool. All right, hey, I got something to say. Tammy and I would really appreciate you liking, rating, and sharing it. It means the world to us. And until next time, toodles. Thanks, Tammy.
Hi, thank you, Sandy. It was amazing being here with you.